Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the host and the founder of the Rise Above Justice Movement and the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. Today, I'll give a viewer discretion, and actually, a very heavy viewer discretion is advised due to the nature of the topics that we will be discussing. Today, I am joined by one of my favorite people, my co host and my co founder, Gwen Levy. Gwen, feel free to introduce yourself really quick.
Hello, everybody. I'm Gwen, and Zachary said I'm the co-founder of Rise Above Justice Movement, and I'm a survivor. I'm a musician, and if you're seeing the social media, uh, all the posts that we're making, then that's a lot of my work as well as Zachary's. And so happy to be here and honored to be here today.
Absolutely, Gwen. Thank you so much. And our guest for the day, for the longest time, was known as minor victim number one in the Jeffrey Epstein trial and the Jeffrey Epstein case. Marina, welcome to the Rise by Justice Movement podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Marina Lacerda here, and I guess I'm known as Minor Victim One. Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. It's our absolute honor. We learned about you through Jess Michaels, but more importantly, we learned about you because you bravely shared your story for the very first time publicly while you were in DC with the other survivors. And the press conference was a monumental moment for these survivors, all being in the same space and being together. So we would love to just have you introduce yourself, walk us through a little bit of your journey and kind of give us like that Cliff Notes version because we'll dive deep into it here in just a bit. Gwen has questions, I have some questions, and we'll kind of do that. But feel free to walk people through a little bit about who you are and some of the work that you are doing, and we'll do some deep dives into your story here in just a bit.
Yeah, of course. So, obviously, again, thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. Um, first off, I'd like to say, like, I'm such a huge dog lover. I think that's the first thing everyone needs to know about me, animal lover. It's definitely something that I'm very passionate about. And, for a long time, I thought that like my calling here on earth was definitely to, save animals. And, obviously I still try to do that. I try to help ASPCA. I try to donate my time as much as I can. Um, but then, after I broke my silence, it's like my whole journey and this light at the end of the road, like definitely changed for me. And I just, thought, hey, I just broke my silence, for the first time ever. And I don't even know how many years, right? Because I've lost count at this point. It should have happened in 2008. And after I broke my silence, I was like, whoa, there's a whole new mission out here for me. I gotta get, not I gotta get, but I gotta bring awareness to the world. And there's so many things that I wanna, share with the world as well, just besides bringing awareness is, you know, um, something that women have lost on the way here, and I want to remind women that there is love, um, there is there is things that women are just forgetting about, I think it comes within women that have lost their ways only because of how things have changed and developed now. And I want to remind women of that. And I think also my light here today in this earth is, in this path, is to just share my story because it's going to help other women, bring awareness and understand why women are abused or men are abused too. Sometimes people forget that and they victim blame. They blame us for things like, why did you go back, why did you continue doing it? So um right now I am doing my best to, trying to write a book, to bring awareness and just to share my whole life, which is really insane. It's obviously a lot to do with Jeffrey Epstein, but has a lot more to do with other things. And hopefully, being a part of a children's book that somebody wrote, and it's actually Ashley Alford. I might be saying it wrong, and I met up with her in New York. So these are two major things that I'm working on right now, and I can't wait to share it with everybody.
And Marina, thank you so much for sharing that because, you talk about even talking about, being part of a children's book. I guess we can kind of dive in a little bit, talking about being a child. And I'd love to hear about your background, what it was like growing up for you, and really what led you to where you are today, not only as a survivor, but what you're doing in all of your advocacy work. So if you don't mind sharing some information about your background and what it was like growing up for you, I think that would be wonderful for our listeners to hear.
Of course, and I think it's so important to understand how I got to Jeffrey Epstein, starting with, how I was a child. I was born in Brazil, and I absolutely have great memories of Brazil with my family and friends, and also my mother. But then my mother decided to move to America. I was about 7 years old. She went to New York. She lived there for a year, basically got her things together, got an apartment, found a boyfriend, and moved me out to New York, Astoria, Queens, with after a year. So I was about 8 years old. I actually had just turned 8. My birthday's June 29, and I got to the States on July 5th. Never forget, because it's like it was such an important day because 4th of July is our independence. So it's like something I could never forget. And when I got to, I'm sorry, to New York, um, everything was so awesome because really at the end of the day, I just wanted to be with my mom. I was infatuated with my mom. My father lived in Brazil, but I don't know why, I just never got close with my dad. And I don't know if it was just the fact that maybe he had other kids with other women. He treated me great. He was a great person. He was a great dad. I wouldn't say so present, but he never did anything wrong. I just think that we just never clicked. I don't know what happened there. So when I got to America, when I got to New York, I'm sorry, my mom had this boyfriend, and I say within like, a couple months of living in a studio apartment in Astoria, my stepfather started to turn on porn and showing it, and having me watch it. He would lay me on his lap and would put a cover over my head. And then, like, I would feel like the need to peek out of it, right? Because, like, no child at 8 years old understands why they're like laying on somebody's lap and, like, having the covers, cover their face. So I started watching porn with him, and within time, he started to do the same things that were happening in porn to my body and, to me. And I didn't understand what was really going on because I just feel like no 8-year-old really knows anything, anything that has to do with sex, oral sex, or, foreplay. Like I don't know any 8-year-old that knows anything about that, and I don't think they should. So as time went on, um, obviously the abuse progressed. It got worse. I never told my mom. And when my mom had my sister at the time, we ended up moving to a bigger apartment. And when we got to that bigger apartment, my mom had a bedroom, and the crib was inside the bedroom where my sister used to sleep. And my stepfather used to stay in the house and take care of, my sister. And still at that time, I would say I was 9 or 9 and a half. I still didn't understand what was going on. And it was like, as crazy as it sounds, and I don't think that, like, I don't even know if this is like something that, like, I even want to admit to, but I just have to because I'm at a point in my life where, like, I'm not gonna like bullshit through anything. It's shameful to say it, but it was so enjoyable as a 9-year-old to feel all these things that someone's doing to you. You've never felt it before, like, right? So 9 and a half, 8 years old, I was feeling great. I had no idea what my stepfather was doing. But then my mom walked into the room, and I guess he was playing with me in the room, like turning me around in the bed and tossing me. And he just flung me across the room. And when he flung me across the room, my mom automatically knew that something was going on. And she immediately told him to get up, and I went to my room, and they were fighting and screaming. And then she came in the room. She never asked me what happened. She just assumed that something had happened. And she said to me, "Listen, I know there's something been going on with you and your stepfather, and I just want you to know it's never going to happen again." Well, from that time on, it happened a whole bunch of more times. And it was like a cycle. Like, it would happen, and I finally understood that it definitely was not okay. It did not feel good anymore because now I understood it was such a bad thing. And when that happened, when I started to reject my stepfather by telling him that, like, no, 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 then I would get physical abuse, and I'd get like kicked down the stairs because we lived on the second floor. And my mom would leave knowing that this man was abusing me. And I tell her, right? Because at that point she already had figured out, she found out. And she turns around and she's like, "Well, I'm gonna go to, the supermarket." And she didn't work at the time. And I wondered, like, why the hell is she leaving me alone with this man when she knows that he is sexually and physically abusing me? So it got to a point where I was getting very upset with my mom, and we would fight a lot. And like, we would go outside and have screaming matches, and I would be like, "Why the fuck do I have to live here? Why the fuck do I have to put up with this?" I'm like 10 years old. I'm like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, why can't we just leave?" She's like, "Well, I'm just not going to be able to find a job. Like, we're immigrants. Like, we don't have our papers. We're not a citizen here. We're illegals here." And I'm like, "That's like bullshit. Like, there's just ways around it." So we fought a lot I'd say from the age of 9 and a half, 10, 9 and a half, until like 12 years old. So a lot of times we had people living in the house with us. And when I was 12 years old, we had this couple living with us after going through so much with my stepfather. And this woman who lived in my house, Leticia is her name actually, and whatever, maybe I shouldn't have said it, but she doesn't care. She comes up to me. I used to go to Burger King on Steinway Street after school because all I wanted to do was get away from home, right? Because like I didn't want to stay fucking home because I was getting abused. And she comes up to me, she touches my shoulder. I was sitting with a friend, and she's like, "Listen, I know you're getting abused by, your stepfather, and he actually did some things to me. And I want to go to I want to go to the police. I want to go to the precinct." And I jumped out of my chair and I was like, "Yeah, I want to go. Like, I've been dying for him to stop." And we walked into the 114 precinct, and when I got there, I told them my story, and they did not believe me. They thought that I was jealous of my new sister, and that you know, they just didn't believe me, and they questioned me really hard. And it was such a difficult time. And then my mom walked in, and I obviously didn't tell them that my mom knew because I knew that I was going to get taken away from my mom. And, as an illegal immigrant, I also didn't tell them all the truth that my stepfather was physically abusing me, and sexually abusing me to the point where I minimized things because I just didn't want him to get into so much trouble because I'm just a kid. Like, I'm like feeling bad about this now, right? Because now the police are like telling me I'm lying, and like they're just not believing anything I say. It was just such a horrible moment. And I thought it was gonna be like a whole different, a whole different experience with them. And it definitely wasn't. It was really it was really sad that, I unfortunately went through that, and the police handled it that way. I hope that for people out there that are going through abuse, that they go through, you know, um, a better experience. That actually kind of really, you know, that got to me right now because I never really got to think about, as a 12-year-old girl, I'm going back now on that day and how much it really, really hurt me, that the police didn't believe me, and they blamed me so hard for being jealous with my sister. And, you know, it was really hard. So, and I know the justice systems nowadays is not even any better. So when I left there, I went back to our house. And of course, my stepfather things were thrown everywhere because the police had came and gotten him. And my mom completely shut down on me. And I went into my room, and I was sad, but I was very relieved. I was very relieved. But then I didn't know what was coming. My mom started to blame me that the reason why we were gonna go through financial difficulties was because I chose to go tell on the police about my stepfather. And I think that became like the toughest time of my life because I had to start working. I started working for a real estate office. Um, then I worked for a factory. Then I worked for a catering in Bedford Avenue. I mean, I worked for a coffee shop. I worked for a nightclub. I started just moving around and getting jobs. And I was having such a difficult time, as an immigrant. Like, nobody really pays you what you're supposed to get paid. People always want to pay you under the table, and they just want to give you something less than what people with a social security would get, as an American. And I started going out very young, obviously, due to the fact that I already, was working, and, my mom already had dropped me out of high school because I couldn't keep up with high school because I was working at the nighttime. And I was like 14 years old at that point. And she just dropped me out of high school. She was like, "You don't want to go to high school? You don't have to go." Like, and for me, it was easier too because it came to a point where I was like, well, I don't have to go to high school. And I had just met Jeffrey. And how I met Jeffrey was freaking crazy, right? Like, regular neighborhood girl down the block from where I lived, maybe 5 blocks away from where I lived. And I went to her house. We were gonna go out and we were getting ready. And I was 14 years old, 13 at the time, and ending my 13, about to turn 14. It was summer. And she says, "Hey, Marina, listen, like, I know you're going." So everybody in the neighborhood also knew that I was sexually abused by my stepfather, that I was working multiple jobs, and I was struggling, and I was helping my mom, and I was paying, for all the bills and rent. And this girl comes up to me and says, "Hey, Marina, listen, I know you're going through something tough, but I have a really good gig for you. And all you have to do is take off your shirt. You don't have to do anything." And I said, "Well, what am I gonna do?" She says, "You're gonna go to a massage." This older gentleman, he's very rich, very powerful, and you don't have to worry about anything. You'll make $300. Half an hour will be there, tops. I said, "Well, how are we gonna get there?" And she goes, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." I said, "Okay, let's go." I mean, at that time I had thought, well, I mean, I've been through much worse. I was in a place where I wanted to leave and I couldn't leave, and I was getting sexually abused. And now I need this money, and now this doesn't seem so bad. It's just a massage. So I said, "Okay, let's go." So she made the appointment, and I didn't know at the time how. And she brought me to Jeffrey Epstein's house in Manhattan. And when I pulled up to that door, I said, "Holy shit," to myself. Where am I? And like, how powerful and how rich is this person, right? And she rings the doorbell in the front. The other person in the line asks who. She says her name. They come, they open the door. It was a woman at the time. And the girl says, "Hey, how are you?" She says, "I'm good." And, she led us into his office, which I guess was the waiting room, and where, Jeffrey would have all his pictures with all his elite and powerful, friends, and a whole bunch of books. And he had a big table with also a lot of pictures, including Bill Clinton. And then on the other stand, he had Prince Andrews. He had pictures with Chris Tucker. I mean, so many different people, actors, actresses, you name it, and he had all these books that he would have on the table, and they were, after a while, because you were staying there, waiting for him because he was always with another girl upstairs. I would really get into those books, and I actually have some of these books because he would let me keep them. And when I got there the first time, I was in total shock. I get there and I'm like, couldn't even talk because I was like scared to speak in his house because I've never been to like anybody's house that big and like anybody that looked that rich. So I was like whispering to my friend, and my friend was like, "Why are you whispering?" I'm like, "Because I don't know what to say." It was just I didn't know how to act. And the woman that was the maid came, said, "Hey, you guys can, come with me." She brought us to the elevator. We went up to the third or the fourth floor, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was the third. And when the doors open on the third floor, directly it goes into you walk into, in front of you is the massage room. And I got in the massage room. It is this blacked out room because they have blackout curtains, right? They have these like heavy, like Victorian or like Beauty and the Beast kind of like curtains, like heavy drapes. And I know he had like blackout, or he had, covered those windows so there was no light there. There was hardly any light in the room, a very light light, and it was clouds on the sky as his ceiling. And it was so pretty. And then he had this huge cabinets full of lotions and oils, and it was so expensive, so nice, it smells so good. And right in the middle there was a massage table. I said, okay. So I got in, and he comes in after a couple minutes, and he shakes my hand. He says, "Hi, how are you? I'm Jeffrey." I said, "Hi, I'm Marina." He laid down with his face down, and he's like, "Oh, Sabrina told me a lot of things about you." I'm sorry. "This girl told me a lot of things about you." I said, "Yes, she told me, some things about you." And he's like, "Yes, I'm so happy to meet you." He asked us how old I was. He asked us if I was going to school. And I explained to him, yes, I was going to school, but I was working so much that I wasn't able to really keep up with school. I kind of told him my whole life and like how I was from Brazil. And, I was just an immigrant, and I was taking care of my sister and my mom. I didn't tell him that my stepfather had abused me. I just said that I didn't have a father and my stepfather wasn't around. Obviously, within time, he knew it. He found out, and I had told him, but I knew he knew it because he kept asking me, like, as if he knew. But at the time when I first met him, I didn't tell him. So, he asked me a couple questions, but then he got on the phone as per usual. Jeffrey would always get on his phone. And I still had my clothes on, but then he turned around and he wanted for me to massage his hand. And he was, sweet talking to me and asking me, um, how did I like living in America, and just asking me, very simple questions, nothing, just questions like anybody would ask, you know, a regular person. And then he turned around, and, at that point, his robe was off, but he had a little towel over his private area. And he turned around and he said to the girl, "Are you ready?" And she's like, "Yeah." And she turned to me, she's like, "Take off your shirt." So I took off my shirt, and I took off my shirt, and he was like, "Oh my God, you have such a beautiful body," and he starts complimenting me. And immediately he like starts touching himself, and then he was like, grabbed my hands and was like, "Can you touch me?" And I was like, I just stood there like so in shock. And I was like, whoa. I looked at my friend and I like laughed a little bit. And she's like, well, let her get comfortable first. And then she asked me to take off my bra. And I was like, feeling super pressured. I was like, this is not what we talked about. And unfortunately, I like took off my bra. I don't know if the girl like helped me out, or it was such in the heat of the moment. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to feel. I didn't know what this man was capable of. I didn't know what this girl was really capable of. I just, she was a neighborhood girl that I've hung out a couple times. And he like just spit on his hand, and he like spit so hard and started to jerk off aggressively. And he would put his head up and like look at me almost like, when someone's having a hard time like trying to do things, like they want to climax but they can't climax. And he did it for about 15 minutes, and he started to touch me, and I pulled his hand away a little bit, and he understood, and then he climaxed, and then he was like, "Oh, well, that was great. You were great, Marina. You should bring her around more often." And the girl was like, "Yeah, yeah, of course I will." And he puts on his robe, he gets up, and he hands her over money, and we go downstairs, and I'm in the elevator. I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "You this is not what you told me. You told me we're just gonna massage, some old dude, really is what she said. She was like, you're gonna massage some old dude." And it just turned into something totally different. And ever since I left there, I don't think that, anything has been the same. It would already started out bad with my stepfather, and it didn't it didn't end very well with, Jeffrey Epstein. And it's crazy because it started out with him just touching himself, and then it started, went from there, from him finally touching me, and then, removing the top, and then the bra, and then, as we started out, and then, removing the pants, and then removing the underwear, and then touching me, I'm touching him. And it just progressed within years. And next thing I was having sex with this man. But the crazy part is, I did not remember because the trauma was so fucked up and so big that when I was talking to the FBI in 2019, they had asked me to write, what my encounters were with Jeffrey Epstein, and I never wrote that I had sex with him. And I'm talking to one of the girls that went there and I brought there, because it came down to that, because it was either I was going to bring him somebody or he was going to cut me off. And at that point, I was seeing him 2, 3 times a week, and I was like, oh my God, I can't get cut off. This is like my main money source. I was not making, 900, almost $1,000 in any other place in New York at that time. Making $1,900 a week was insanely good. And one of the girls that I brought there says to me, I speak to her today, she's a survivor, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, I can't believe it. And this is like in 2021. This is crazy. Like, girls are having, like, I'm hearing like that all these girls had sex with Jeffrey Epstein. She just stood quiet on the phone. She's like, Marina, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, girl. I said, can you believe I'm talking to these other survivors? I'm like, getting to know them. And I'm sorry, it was in 2024 because I started meeting the survivors, 2024, which was last year. And I said, it's crazy. And she's like, Marina, you were like a prop for Jeffrey Epstein. Like, he would pick you up and put you on top of him, and he would tell us, like, you see, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is how you do it. And it's crazy because, thinking back now, I'm like, holy shit, I can remember exactly what he did to me and how he used me as a prop, and how I was his, like, his little guinea pig. Like, this is how, how you do it right. And it was so easy for me to drop out of high school at the time because Jeffrey Epstein just had that concept of, like, and again, with every girl, it worked different, and he had a different story. But he was just like, high school is, it's not really the thing. It's who you know, and how much you know people, and how much you can, you know, and how much you have on them. He used to always tell me that. He's like, I own people. I own the bank, I own the government, I own everybody. I own everybody, and I can dictate what goes and what doesn't. So he always made that as a thing. So, and I never got to graduate high school. It didn't help out the fact that I met him, and he was, such an important, rich person. And, at the time, I thought he was a brain surgeon. And I was like, this guy is obviously like telling me the right thing, like, fuck school. Like, I don't need it. I'm making money with him. He's going to help me out. Like, I'm going to become something with this guy. This guy is going to hook me up. And obviously, it did not happen because I am here today telling the story. So I think that's a little bit of how I got from being a child, and why I want this book to come out, because this book that I want to come out, that I didn't write, obviously, but I want to be a part of it. And we're working on, you know just how she's wants to release it, and all that. She doesn't want to go through Amazon because she's also a survivor, Ashley. And she wrote this book, and it's really for five to like, it's the age of like from 5 to 9 years old. And it's just teaching kids, to bring awareness of when, because that's when really sexual abuse starts to happen, and maybe even a little bit younger, right? But I think 5 years old, you kind of start to know like what's right or wrong a little bit, and you can teach kids. And it just teaches them like, hey, listen, like it's okay to say no, and you should say no when you feel uncomfortable, or somebody's touching you or saying something to you, or you need to tell somebody. Because, in school, a 5 year old, a 6 year old, a 7 year old, maybe an 8 year old, but they're not learning about, sexual abuse awareness, or just abuse, period. These kids are not learning about it. And then they get sexually abused, and they get abused, and then they wonder why it has happened to them, because, they weren't taught. And then they weren't taught to speak about it, and to let an adult know that something is going on. It doesn't feel right. And it starts with the parents, with the education. We need to teach the kids at this age. I know a lot of parents say, hey, like, hey, that's so young, that it's not young. It's not young. Kids need to know that their privacy, they have boundaries. They need to know if something doesn't feel right, and it's not doesn't sound right. They need to tell an adult in order for it not to go on many years. Myself, from 8 till 12, I got sexually abused by my stepfather. Obviously my mom knew, but then look, the cycle went on. I met Jeffrey Epstein 13 and a half. So I can't wait for me to move forward with this book project. I'm really, really excited, and I can't wait for it to come into light and be, having the teachers having to read it, and these pre-K, I mean, well, kindergarten classes, hopefully even pre-K. Um, it would really be, it would be really, it would mean a lot to me, and I can't wait. I really can't. So that's where I am today, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that, and I have the utmost respect for you and the utmost admiration for you because you speak in a way that obviously telling your story over and over and over again, it can be very daunting. It can be very triggering. And, as a survivor myself, and I think Gwen can also attest to this, and any other survivor who is listening, that you know, we tell our stories not for publicity, not to obviously get paid for it, because let's be real, there is no money to be made in this. There's not. But at the same time, I think that connection with other survivors is even more worth it than just a dollar amount, right? So I want to acknowledge the fact that, you were silent for years, like years and years and years. What was that moment for you that just kind of clicked? Like, I have to say something. I have to do something. I have to share it. I have to, being around other survivors obviously helped with that decision. But what was that like, that aha moment, essentially? Because I know we all have it, but what was that moment for you?
So, I was around survivors, but not. So I was around survivors that were my friends. So they were
Mhm.
really not in the place of like, yeah, like you should tell everybody, like, yeah, 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 like we should speak. It was like complete opposite. It was like, oh my God, we could never tell this to everybody. I had told some of my friends where I live now in Florida, and they just didn't really like, I don't know, they just didn't really like go like, well, some of them were like, wow, that's crazy, that's insane. But they weren't touched, or like they didn't feel anything towards it. Maybe some of my friends, but a lot of them were just like, it's like something that you just move forward from, right? And I think when it really came down to it was Brittany Henderson, um, and Brad. I hadn't met them, and it's a funny story with them because um Brittany and Brad were looking for me for a long time, and they just couldn't find me. And I had all these girls that connected to me and knew me from a story, but for some reason they just didn't want to, they didn't look for me or didn't want to speak to me. And I had nothing to do because I brought them to Jeffrey Epstein, because I didn't actually with any of these girls. They just didn't know how to get in touch with me. And I finally met Brittany and Brad, um, I'd say 5 months before I broke my silence. And, Brittany and Brad were like, wow, we're so happy to meet you. We met up in an Italian restaurant. We had dinner and we had a great conversation. And they were like, we're so glad to meet you. And in my head, I'm like, why are they glad to meet me? Like, I'm so confused, still being confused the fact that I'm minor victim one. And I till today, to be honest with you, I still don't understand it, right? Because it's so hard for me to grasp like what is the big deal. And sometimes it's not sometimes, it's what I go through. And what I had to really think about was something that was so intense for me. It was like, holy shit, I could have spoken in 2008 when the FBI came looking for me and I didn't. And then the 2019 or 2000 end of 2018, FBI came looking for me again and I was like, holy shit, I just can't run away from this crap. And I got subpoenaed twice, once in 2008, again 2019. And when I was talking to Brittany and Brad, after we met and we've been talking, and Brittany's like, hey, listen, we're going to the Capitol, and a lot of the survivors that already spoken are going to speak again. And, this is why it's important, and, da 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 da. And I obviously had gone to Virginia's memorial right before we went to the Capitol. Well, not right before, a few months before. And it was actually here in Florida. And I had just gone 2 weeks before to New York to my soon to be ex-husband's aunt's funeral. And I know his aunt for, I don't even know, 15 years, 2 years, the last 2 years she was in the hospital, but 15 years. I did not shed one tear for this woman. Okay. And it wasn't because I have nothing against her. I absolutely love her. I was just more like, holy crap, this woman has been in the hospital for 2 years, you know, like not talking, not eating, like they dragged out the way she was supposed to go. And I just felt so bad for her. And I think it was more of a relief for me. I was like, oh my God, thank God she's free. Because her daughter was holding on to her and kept resuscitating her. And I was like, holy crap, like she's suffering so much. And so was her daughter and her son. So I had just went to her funeral, did not shed one tear. I've never met Virginia Guffrey, ever, ever. When I get to her memorial, of course, I see survivors that I know that I never even knew that were a part of Epstein's, world. So it was really like, wow, 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 wow. Like I've seen you around and da da da, and I can't believe you've been through this. And when I sat down and Sigrid spoke first, and tears scrolled down my eyes. But when Sky spoke, her brother and Amanda, I was like, oh my God, oh my God. This woman has been working, not working for us, but working towards towards all the women that have been abused so many years, just trying to speak and shed a light. And nobody has been listening to her. Holy crap. How could I have been in the dark with this? And I didn't just shed a tear. I was hysterical crying. From what I understood, and obviously, I mean, people that are reading her book, and just from her brother, the way he speaks about her, you know, and I don't know her. This is what I know about her: kind, sweet, giving, you know, deep person, and just wanted to make a change as well. And Brittany and Brad had said to me about going to the Capitol a month or 2 months after, I can't remember. And I was like on the fence about it because I was so worried about what people were thinking and what were people going to think of me and what were they going to say about me and all this, all this stupid shit that it doesn't even matter anymore and it shouldn't even matter at all. Let's just start with that. And I said to somebody, I said, I think I'm going to speak in the Capitol. I didn't talk to my ex-husband. I didn't want to talk to I wanted to talk to one person. It was a friend of mine. And I didn't want to speak to anybody because I don't want anybody to do with what my decision was going to be. I want it to be my decision and my decision only. And I said to my girlfriend, I said, I think I want to talk about what happened with me. And I feel really, you know, I feel really at fault that I didn't speak in 2008. I feel like I could have stopped it. And I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of that I didn't speak in 2008. I didn't get to, I got subpoena, but I didn't get to go because, Jeffrey got the deal that he got by Alexa Costa. And, they just told me, hey, you don't have to do anything. So I never fought for that. And I was so young and I didn't think that I should have fought for it because I didn't think there was so many women out there. There wasn't Google, there wasn't all these things where I could have searched. And I was so young I just didn't think anything of it. And then I said to myself too, I said, well, this woman that I just went to her, memorial, I said, who the fuck is going to speak now? Who's going to continue speaking and doing the work that she was doing for us? Well, for me at least, or for the rest of the victims that are staying silent and not talking about it. And my girlfriend said to me, she said, Marina, you live this life one time. And when you die, nobody cares. They only have one memory of you, and what that memory is that you were here and that you were part of their lives, and that's it. Nobody's going to remember that you did this, or that possibly brought girls there, or that you didn't speak in 2008, or that you got abused by this man. And she goes, nobody's going to remember that, right? Everyone's just going to remember you as a person. Now if you want to tell your story, of course people are going to remember you by your story, but that's not going to define who you are. And you're only here one time and then you're gone, and that's it, girl. And I was like, you know what? She's fucking right. I'm here one fucking time. God gave me this and he gave it to me for a reason. And now my job really is to share my story. I have to share my story. There's a reason why Brittany and Brad asked me to go there. It wasn't for nothing. There's a reason why we ask other victims to speak. And it's not only because, hey, we want to hear your story. Yes, of course we do. But you have information that will also bring justice to other victims that aren't able to speak, and also justice to those that aren't with us anymore. And justice to, the upcoming generation so that they are aware and we can stop all these other men that are continuously just abusing women in every way, and men too. And I said, yeah, I'm going to speak. And 2 days before I went to Washington, I called Brittany and Brad and I said, hey, is it too late for me to come? And they were like, no, 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 no. And I was like, all right, because I'm fucking coming, and I'm coming with with everything I got. So yeah, that's how I decided to go.
I feel like you should be so proud, Marina, of just using your voice, a voice that was silenced, and now you're giving back to people that really need to hear it. And there's a quote from you that I just thought was really beautiful when I was reading up on your story. And you said, I feel empowered knowing that the little girl struggling to get by at 14 and 15 years old finally has a voice for the first time. The way you were speaking about how you were treated, not only by Epstein, who said, I own people, like literally thought he, clearly thought people could be used as slaves, and just the way he talked in general, and then your experiences growing up being abused as a child, and and as we're learning, Epstein preyed on very vulnerable people. um so for a long time, I'm sure, as you're telling your story, it must have been lonely, just, not having told your story. And for me, I'm also a childhood um, sexual assault survivor. So, and I was silenced. I was not allowed to say what happened to me. Um, so I really relate to that, just feeling like you're, 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 you're lonely. In the abuse. And what I thought was such a beautiful moment that I wanted to ask you about is that in September, when gathering in front of the US Capitol with fellow Epstein survivors. You shared your story with the press. And I just wanted to ask you how that moment felt, not only to share your moment with the press, but also to be surrounded by fellow survivors who might understand what you were going through.
Well, so I just want to bring back, I shared my story earlier that day in the Subhouse committee. That was actually my first time speaking ever in front of people. And I
Oh,
just got to
wow.
share
Yeah.
it. I just got to share that part because
Yes.
some people don't know that I was a part of that because that the Subhouse committee was so, it was
It was
such a
so
secrecy.
secretive.
Yeah,
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 we
yeah.
still don't really know. Like they haven't said what was said. So yeah.
So, okay, I know a lot of things were said there, and I connected, and this girl is I mean, oh my God, I connected so much with this girl because I didn't go. So okay, so it was my turn to speak the story. So we all were in, like, we were all like telling our stories, just like it went down the line. It started with the farmer, Maria Farmer, and it just went down the line. And I can't say everybody else's name, and oh, Haley too. It just went down the line, like just exactly year by year. And when it got to 2008, like when the FBI came to me, the next girl was after he got out in 2008 and he was free to go, and the FBI just ignored the fact that I had lawyers of Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Because Jeffrey Epstein hired the lawyers for me so I could stay quiet. Just want to say that out there. And the girl that was next to me was getting abused, okay? He created a job. I don't want to say what kind of job. He created a job for him to get out on work release so that he can hire women, young girls, to work at this place. And he was abusing, he was sexually abusing, raping these women, okay, with an FBI agent in the front door looking out for him.
Wow.
So I connected with this girl so hard, and I felt even more. So that's one thing that I like. I'm learning to understand that it was not my fault, but being minor victim one almost makes it seem like you were the key to this and you could have stopped this. I know everyone is like, no, no, no. And I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. I could have like said something, but I didn't have the resources to go, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know who was looking for me. I didn't know what was going on. If I did, I probably would have spoken and saved all these women. I thought it was just the girls that I knew went to Jeffrey's Epstein. I didn't know it was thousands of girls. So I connected with this girl so hard that I ended up missing my flight from Washington to Florida, okay? Because we were drinking wine and we were eating sushi, and we were at the hotel, and like it was intense, our connection. But when I spoke in the Subhouse committee, um, let me tell you, Brittany was right next to me, and thank God, Brittany was with me the whole time, because if she wasn't, it would have been bad. I must have said three sentences out of my story because I had written it down, because you have to write it down, because you just start flying off the charts and you start saying like, yeah, I love candy, and yeah, and then Jeffrey Epstein, you start saying crazy shit. So I wrote it down, but I cried so much. I cried like a little baby to the point where I was like, I couldn't even talk. You know when you cry and you could at least talk? I couldn't even talk. And I had to like turn to Brittany and touch her hand. I'm like, can you please finish for me? I couldn't even talk. So she finished for me. She was like, what I think Marina's trying to say is, and she finished for me. So that was my first time speaking. So, and then I had ABC that day, which, I spent almost 2 hours and only 8 minutes of it got shot, but that's okay. I appreciate them. They were the first ones to share my story on national television, really. I mean, besides the Capitol. So when I got to the Capitol, being around all these women, first of all, coming into the Capitol and seeing that everyone was going crazy, Okay, I was already like, what the hell? Like people were screaming, they had signs, people were upset with Marjorie Taylor. Like it was like, what the hell is going on here, right? I've never been to this kind of setting with Washington. I've been to Washington before, but not in this kind of setting. And sorry about that. And you know, I got there and I was like, wow, this is fucking intense. Like, what the fuck? Like, what did I get myself into? I started to get scared, you know, about speaking. And then I got comfortable because, I seen Haley there who I look up to so much. I mean, I give her so much power. She's such a strong person. And then, I had Danny Bensky there who I knew from 15 years old, and we hung out all the time. I mean, we were hitting up clubs at 15, 16 years old. I just want to say that, like, intensely crazy. Like, what the hell? What were we doing in New York City, Manhattan clubs? And I saw her and I was like, oh, Danny. And she's like, Marina. And I'm like, oh my God. I touched her arm and I said, please don't tell me I brought you. And she's like, no, you didn't. And thank God, because like I automatically would have felt bad about that. And I didn't bring her there. So I was happy about that. Um, and it felt great being around all these powerful women who had such a strong and loud voice and had spoken before. It made me feel comfortable, but it also made me feel scared because um, I don't know how people were going to react for the first time that I was coming out after I hadn't been out and I hadn't spoken, you know. So it was tough, to accept the fact what people were going to think again, because we're always thinking about what are people going to think. Oh, are they going to think that why did you go back? Why did you do it? You were 14. You should have known better. Like. So I didn't want people to be like, well, why is she coming out now? It's what Zachary said. Like, you know, is she coming out because she's getting paid for it and this and that? And exactly what you said, there is no money in this. We are not like, none of the victims speak anywhere in any platform and they're like, hey, we're going to give you like 600. Like, that does not happen. We are speaking for a purpose. So when I got to the Capitol, I really, was speaking on behalf of Virginia and my daughter, because I was like, holy shit, I do not want this to ever happen to my daughter. I never want her to have this experience. Obviously, she has a whole different life than I have, and but you never know. You never know how it can happen and who it can happen, right? Who can do it to her. So when I got there, really what inspired me to speak was three people. It was my girlfriend who told me you only live once and who gives a fuck? Like, just do what you got to do, girl. If that's what you want to do, then do it. Like, go ahead and follow your heart, follow your gut, and I did that. And Virginia, her memorial moved me so much. I really cannot describe how much Sky and Amanda, which is Virginia Guffrey's brother, and then her sister-in-law, how much Sigrid too, but Sky and Amanda, I mean, holy crap. And in the end of the memorial, we let these butterflies go. It was so fucking beautiful. Oh my God. It was so intense. It was so deep. It was so emotional. It was everything. And my daughter who is like the next generation coming up, who, this generation I feel like has really no clue. I mean, really no clue about just abuse in general, sexual, physical, emotional. We got the internet, blinding us with, you got TikTok and all this crap blinding us with things um, that aren't teaching our kids what's important to know right now. So I think those are the reasons why I'm out here today.
We're incredibly proud and honored to sit down and obviously talk to you. And this has been an eye-opening moment, doing this podcast, learning survivor stories, understanding that people like me, my mom, Gwen, we're not alone in this fight against these perpetrators that continue to wreak havoc throughout our communities. Because even though Jeffrey Epstein is one of those perpetrators, and this is literally the biggest trafficking case and sexual abuse cases literally in the entire, I can't even just say the United States, but also the entire world, because it expands beyond just the United States. It goes to the UK, it goes to connections with Israel, it goes to connections with all around the world, right? This is one of the most notorious serial predators literally ever. But one thing that we need to recognize is we still have other people like Jeffrey Epstein that are still in our communities today. They are still in our communities today. They're still getting a slap on the goddamn wrist with no accountability whatsoever. And that is the reality in which myself, my mom, we never received justice. We will never see justice. One, statute of limitations is already out, first of all. But second of all, I don't think I can honestly face my perpetrator in court because I would have a case against me, and I don't want to do that. And, what has been your healing journey? What does healing look like to you? Because healing is not linear. It is complex. It looks different for each person. What may have worked for you may not have worked for me, and vice versa. What worked for Gwen may not have worked for anybody else because everybody is different. For me, I like journaling. I like writing. I like writing out my thoughts. And I remember after my first time being sexually assaulted, I was sexually assaulted twice, one at 17 and one at 21. And I remember writing out every single thought and every single feeling that I had, and I literally burnt it. Like I just burnt it, and it just like lifted everything out of me. I wrote out every single emotion, and it was suggested by my therapist at that time. She was like, if you want to get everything out, write out everything that you're feeling and burn it. I said, isn't that kind of silly? And isn't that a waste of trees? But she said, it's going to make you feel so much better in the long run. And it did, because now I'm able to speak about my story without feeling guilty for talking bad about somebody. Because I hate doing that. I'm not that kind of person. My mom would disagree, but I'm not that kind of person. And I think Gwen would disagree too if you look at some of our text messages. But anyway, that's a whole different that's a whole different conversation in that regard. But it's just, what does healing look like for you, Marina? And what is next for you? So you do have this book, but what other aspirations do you have to continue in your healing journey, and what does it look like for you?
So sorry about that. First of all, you know, I just want to touch back on the fact that you said um that you said, Zachary, you said that you wouldn't want to face your perpetrator. Is that what you said to me? Right? You said that going back a little bit?
Yep. I don't honestly think that I would ever be able to face either one of them.
Mm.
I I'm a big proponent of restorative justice. So I think that if I tried to do restorative justice, if I would have done it back then, if I would have known what it was and it was available at that time, I think I could have done that because it'd be more guided. I just don't feel that I could actually sit in a courtroom without, some type of advocate or some type of like, I honestly don't know if I could do it. But
I, I
obviously,
I agree with you. Listen, the reason why I brought that back is because when I got subpoenaed in 2008, obviously, that was my first thought. Like, what the fuck? I'm by myself. I am like 20 or 21 years old. The fuck am I gonna do? Like, still an illegal immigrant. Like, how am I gonna go to court? I'm like, what if I get deported, And then when I got subpoenaed in 2019, I was obviously, I had got legal in America. I became a citizen, but I still didn't want to face Jeffrey Epstein. And I was going through all these depositions, and I'm like, holy shit, no, 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 no. Like, I don't want to do it. So I totally understand because some of the victims were like, yep, I want to go. I want to see him in court and I want to point him out. And I think Courtney Wild, like one of the girls we were talking, and that Courtney Wild, they were like, girl, you made us feel so like one of the other survivors was saying like that Courtney Wild was like literally like within feet of Jeffrey Epstein. And they asked her something and she was like, yeah, this man right here raped us. And the girls were like, dude, like, what the fuck? Like, you have so much courage, Because she like sat right there, was like, yep, him right there. He raped us, and was like pointing to him. So, and some people can do that. Like, I feel the same way. I don't think I could ever face my stepfather and Jeffrey Epstein. So it's really crazy. And I think like part of healing, what you said, to write. So I did a lot of writing. I didn't do a lot of writing with Jeffrey Epstein, only because I was ashamed to write everything that I was doing, and I should have, because um survivors has everything written down. What I did do with my stepfather, I have four diaries on my stepfather. I can go back and like write a book on just that alone, which probably will be so much of my book. And yeah, this children's book, I think, is part of my healing, because it also is going to help, children understand everything. But I'm having a really big problem right now, and I'm going to be honest with you. When I met with Ashley in New York, who actually wrote this children's book, it's called Maya's World, if I'm not mistaken. And she turned to me and she said, and my therapist just said that, Randy said that to me last week. I walked in the room, and I start like going off like blah 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 blah, blah, anybody that would see me, they're like, holy shit, what drugs is she on? Um, I'm super overwhelmed, and my healing, my healing journey has been difficult for me to really touch the subject of Jeffrey Epstein and my stepfather, and to go into deep details. So it's been a very difficult task for me. And so what me and my therapist and we're talking about is like, I need to be more grounded. And I think that part of my healing process now is definitely going to be going outside and stepping on some grass and hugging the tree, and just trying to get more grounded with myself, and stabilizing my frequency here, because I'll go from like up, and my day will start like that. I'm like all the way up there, and then like 6 7 o'clock hits, and I'm like, "Meow," like I just crash, But part of my healing process, I do have to say, okay, that has helped me. And I know this is gonna sound totally insane. I know people are gonna be like, oh yeah, whatever. Dancing and putting on music and just dancing by myself. Like, I know it sounds insane. Guys, I think when you feel music in your heart, and you feel it in your body, and you feel it in your soul, and you can just move around, it doesn't matter if you know how to move around. If you can sing as loud as you want, I mean, from like happy songs to like sad songs, like, and just cry through those songs and be happy with the songs. And there are happy songs that I cry to. And it brings me back to certain parts of my life where I don't want to speak about it out loud with my therapist and with people sometimes. And it's crazy because when I did a podcast with my first podcast that I ever did was with oh my God, I'm forgetting his name, Don Fisher. I spent 8 hours with him, and I told him almost I mean, like, I think I told him everything. Stuff that I didn't tell my therapist. And I was like, holy crap, what the fuck did I just do? I just told this man everything about my life that I have not shed any light to anybody, nor my soon to be ex husband, nor none of my best friends, nor my sister. My mom, forget about it. She doesn't even care. She wouldn't even care about it. So I think part of this healing process has a lot to do with grounding yourself, right? Which I need to get there. And I'm not going to say that I'm there, because um, I never want to take ownership for that if I don't have it. I think people need to own it before you share the experience. But I do have to say that music and singing is like definitely like one of the things that has helped me through the worst times, and has me opened up to bringing me back to what I had forgotten about, and who I really was, and what I really did, and what I need to do to think about it, so that I can process it and figure out a way of how to flip that in my head and say, it's okay. It's just a part of your life. It's something that you did, and it's something that's going to make you stronger. And this is something that is going to be useful for you to share it with the world so that the world can know about this and can be aware and can learn from this feeling or from this situation. So definitely incorporate music and dancing and singing as loud as you can. And like at me at times, I like personally, I think I sound like Whitney Houston, but obviously I don't. So it like it helps out the process because I think like I'm a huge singer and obviously I'm not. I don't know how to sing at all. But when I'm singing, it sounds pretty great. So I think that's a big part of healing for me, to be honest with you.
Marina, thank you so much. I feel like the healing journey, it's never ending, but also it's almost so exciting when I like saw the smile on your face, and I know people can't see Marina, but it's like when you're talking about healing, it just brings me so much joy because I totally relate to that feeling. And everything you've shared today has been, it's gonna help people in so many ways. And I just love what you're doing to help children. And as I said, also being a survivor, a sexual assault survivor as a child. I wish I had a children's book or there's something out there that taught me what happened to me instead of me internalizing all the shame and guilt my whole life. And I just really feel like your book is going to help so many people. And to wrap up, I would just love for you to share, is there a title to the book? What should we look out for from you, Marina, when we're coming, we're releasing the children's book, and then what else should we look out for from you in 2026?
You know, I have not thought of a name yet. I'm going to be honest with you. A couple things have thought, have come to my head, but nothing has stick yet, and I don't want to say stuff that I don't know yet. But definitely look out for Maya's World. It's gonna come out there, and it's gonna be all over, and it's gonna go, I think, through Chicago, the Chicago Foundation first. It's not gonna be an Amazon book. I know that for sure. Ashley does not want that, so we're definitely trying to get away from that. Um, as part of my book, I think first I will release it in Brazil from what it's looking like, only because. Um, we live in America and we don't really, it's not that we don't pay attention. I think it's just not brought to our attention how abuse, sexual, physical, I mean, you think that here women are getting raped. It's insane in Brazil. And the crazy part is it's not only Brazil, South America. I'm going to say Brazil because I know a little bit about Brazil. Um, Latin countries. I don't want to just say South America, Latin countries, you know, um, people are getting raped and then are being forced to have these kids, these babies that are, rape babies. And I get it. Some women do and some women don't. But I think that women should have their own decision if they want to have that baby. And in Brazil, it is against the law. And if you do go somewhere, as they say, an underground, place. It's very dangerous. And I think, Brazil and other countries, they need that light right now and that power to make that change in their countries. At least here we have some sort of a little bit of justice. I know that Zachary early said that the justice system, it like has it's totally failed us, like the statute of limitations. And listen, from just having a little bit of my platform, and I hear people telling me like their stories and how the justice system has what they have done and how they reacted about this and how they took it upon it. It is insane. Insane. I am so upset of how the system has failed the fuck out of us. This is 2025 in the United States of America. What the fuck is going on out there? Why are people getting away? It's that exactly what Zachary said. Why are people getting away with this shit? This is not okay. But I mean, we're talking about now what the statute of the age of limitation is going to be 14 now. From what I'm understanding, they're trying to pass this law. So what? It's to make it easier so that when people do feel like, when people are getting raped, and I guess with 14 it's going to be okay, or 15 it's going to be okay. That should not be okay. It's just making it easier for the rich and the powerful people. And it really baffles me how things are changing and shifting to a whole different direction. Um, and, even with music nowadays, I feel like, the way that it's being spoken, and just the narrative and the message that they're sending out to children, to women, it leads them into a different road, and it makes us forget, who we are as women and men and just human beings. It's become everybody's lost. And I hope that, I can continue to speak on many different platforms. And, again, like Zachary said, and like you said, when we're not here to make money. We're not here. Um, it's not it's not to become a celebrity. It's really to share and to shed a light into people's life. Guys, we're all humans. Something has happened to all of us at one point, some sort of trauma. Let's let's key that in, and let's not forget. Let's respect each other. Let's help each other. Don't walk by something and just not care and just feel like it's not your job. I know growing up, we had people that, helped us and looked at us and did stuff when, even if it wasn't their problem. And now we've come to a point where people are drowning sometimes, and getting beat up, or, getting robbed, and nobody cares. So I think it's important for people to really, remember that. I'm sorry, I'm going everywhere now, because I just get so deep and so emotional about this, and I just want to share so much.
And you do not have to apologize. Like everything you've said has been so inspiring, and I'm just blown away, and I'm really, really just honored to be here and to be talking to you today. So with that being said, was there anything else you wanted to add? I think that's a beautiful place for us to stop. It leaves people with a lot of hope, and just the work you're doing is gonna, like we've been saying, it's just gonna inspire and help so many people, which is so needed right now. And so thank you for being here, Marina. And I'm Gwen, as people know, and then Zachary, if there's anything you would like to add, please feel free.
The one thing that I'll add is that survivors are forces to be reckoned with and not to be fucked with, because there is nothing more powerful than a group of survivors coming together to say, you know what? I've had enough of these patriarchal systems and enough of this quote unquote justice system that I'm going to take a stand against the patriarchy. I'm going to take a stand against these quote unquote powerful men when in reality they're boys, because there is a distinct difference. And anybody who takes the innocence of somebody, that's not a man. That's called a coward. And that's the reality of that. And I just feel so empowered to continue sharing stories like yours, Marina, and giving this platform, because me and Gwen and my other two co-founders have busted our asses off getting this platform off the ground. And we are not backed by a corporation. We are not a nonprofit. We are not backed by billionaires. We are survivors, and we say enough is enough, because one is too damn many. Whenever we look around the world and see what's happening, the world is literally on fire right now. There's good moments, and then every time we get something good, it's like we take 4,000 steps backwards, because 4,000 other things that are horrific happen. And then you have another good thing. We had a lot of momentum with the elections last night, because for the first time in
Hmm.
elections, I felt seen.
Hmm.
I know my mom's not very political, but the people that were elected last night are going to continue fighting for people like my mom, because they believe in uplifting people like my mom, who is a cancer patient, who is going into remission from cancer, who is going to kick cancer's ass because she also kicked domestic violence's ass. She is a survivor. And she deserves to have access to these crucial programs that help her thrive because cancer treatment's fucking expensive. We logged into her insurance and we saw how much the insurance has been billed, and there ain't no way in hell, unless you're Donald Trump, you can afford to pay these medications because holy shit. But with all that said, Marina, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. And I say from the bottom of my heart that I have a special place for the Jeffrey Epstein survivors. I always will. The group of you mean the entire world to me. Jess and you and Haley and all of these beautiful survivors. And rest in power, Virginia. We're thinking of you. And
Um,
sorry. I
okay,
Virginia's story hits me in a different way.
yeah.
And rest in power, Virginia. We believe you.
Continue to fight. You know, she's I feel like she's here. I feel like she's here. I'm in a room by myself, and I feel like she is here with me right now. I feel her literally almost right next to me, you know, and I know she is looking down, and I know she's like, go get him and don't fucking stop. And we cannot stop. And because of people like you, like Gwen, like your mother, and you know, your mother is going to kick cancer in the fucking butt. She's done it before with being a survivor, and she's gonna do it again. And you being by her side, who's been through also a horrible experience and having this experience and, talking to people, it only makes you stronger, Zachary. So I think we have to take these experiences and look at it as in like, damn, it's fucked up, like, right? Like, because I look at it, I'm like, holy shit, what the fuck? I should have been like a fucking crackhead today with all the shit that I've been through. But we turn that around, and like you said, we are not to be fucked with, because this only makes us want to go harder and to really, really kick that door down with full power and be like, I fucking did it, you know? And I always say this: hope is what we have. And like I say on my platform, protect your peace, because that's the only thing you got that does not cost anything. Don't ever stop protecting your peace. It is the most important thing. And people don't know that until it is taken away from you. So I always tell people, protect your peace. If you have health and peace, that is all you need in life. Nothing else matters. Everything else is just a plus in life. But people take that for advantage. So, as a reminder to people, health, you have your peace, you are rich, my friend. You have everything in life. Don't ever forget that. Live your life, live every day like it's your last. You don't know the day of tomorrow. And don't ever, ever listen to anybody there that has any doubts in you, because nobody should have any doubt in you. You have yourself, you have hope, you have faith. That is all you need. Protect your peace, guys.
You know what,
For-
Gwen? You know what I just realized?
what?
It's not even Sunday, and Marina just took us to church.
I was just
And
about to say, protect your damn peace, y'all. Like, hell
Guys,
yeah. I was literally
protect.
like,
Holy shit. Like, you know what I mean? Because I have to say, my peace was taken away from me years
mm-hmm,
ago. And all of us.
mm-hmm.
And we don't realize it until like now that we're talking about it. We're like, holy shit. We had, we had our peace taken, because we don't realize that. But Zachary's peace, Zachary's mom's peace, your peace, these survivors' peace was taken away from them. And now, today, when I'm going through shit like my divorce, I know that it has nothing to do with this, but my peace was taken away from me. And now I'm like, wait, how much do I have to pay to get my peace back? Because I'm willing to pay for that motherfucker. But it's not something that I can buy. Okay. It's something that it got taken away from me. And now within time, hopefully I'll get it back. And it's part of the healing process and all that. That's why I say protect your peace, because God damn it, like we do not realize how important that thing is. Peace is health. And if we don't have it, it will bring us to a point where we are breaking down. And then we're like a car that just got old and we are not repairing it because we have no more strength. We have none in us to to repair it because our peace was taken away, and then we start becoming ill. It's not, it's the thoughts, it's the peace. That's what makes us ill. That's what gets fucked up. And that's where, we go like, why the fuck is this happening to me? Oh yeah, that's why, because I was stressed about this and this was happening to me. And that's when we realize that like our peace is taken away from us and we just don't realize it. And we don't realize it until it's taken away from us and how important it is and how it's everything that we need in this life. It's everything that we need in this life. It really is. And I really like, this is something that I'm living on right now. Like I just want peace. And it's so peaceful when I talk to, about my story and I can share my story and how I'm feeling and how what's going on through my head, just about so many things in this world, like Zachary said about the election and how it's going to change, looking at some of these people that got elected yesterday, which I haven't been keeping up with very much, but I was looking at it, a lot of them were gunning down for Trump and just doing all these things. And, also government Cuomo, right, who abused all these women. And you have now the new I'm sorry, the new yeah, you have the new mayor, governor. I feel like I only know Governor Ron DeSantis over here. You have the new mayor in in New York, and he is like speaking up for these survivors, who can't speak because you got Cuomo who, sue them for defamation. So we are stepping in, hopefully, uh, into a whole new era, and um, protect your peace, guys. It's so important.
Well, thank you so much, Marina. And that's, like I said, a great place to leave off. Protect your peace. And to all survivors out there, we love you. And Marina, we love you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Gosh, the courage, the strength, the resilience, everything you've shared today is just, like I said, it's going to really help people. Um, so with that being said, Zachary, would you like to wrap up and leave everyone on a positive note?
Absolutely. Marina said it best, protect your peace. And I think we've said it at least a dozen and a half times in this episode, and we're going to continue saying it. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. Those are not just three words, it's a mission. And it's something that does not cost a single thing. It does not cost a single thing to be empathetic towards a survivor. Believe us, hear us, and uplift us. Marina, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Gwen, I love you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with me. And with that, take care of yourselves, and I will see you on the flip side.
Thank you so much, guys. Protect your peace. Thank you again.